Well, I'm Mary Alice Stewart, and I'm a writer. I think that's the first way I'd identify, actually. Reader, and right now, teacher, um, and helper electrician, and and a, an associate book agent at ENLIVEN Endeavors, which is a very, very exciting new chapter in my life. Um, but I have been working with Annie, who is the founder of the agency, for about 5 years. But how I first met her was on the page. So it went like this, which makes every day kind of feel lucky. I really loved her book. This is to say, I really loved her book. White Nights in Split Town City, a tyrant book, just really, really gorgeous.
It's an amazing book. I love that book too. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
super. So you read her book. Did you just like contact her after reading it, like as a fan, or like how did that happen?
It was kind of, when I say kismet, it really was. Like I read the book, kind of being like into Tyrant and like alt lit scene. And then somewhat happenstance, I guess, I was a student, an undergrad at Bennington College, and she was invited to do a reading. And I was just, and so I can see it in my head so clearly. It was this beautiful little common room of this commons building. And like, I mean, I was so enchanted the entire time at Bennington, in one capacity, because authors' books just kept on becoming alive. Like it never happened in my life before. And so like all of a sudden somebody was there. And she had such a good energy. She was so confident in herself and really was not like anybody else. And she ended up teaching a class the next term that I was just so lucky to have been able to get into, because honestly, elbows were up getting into that class with her. And yeah, she rocked, and it was called Dirty Realism. And I think that was also the first time that I was taught by a a woman, like in a fiction workshop type class, which is strange for the college, I guess. But it for it to be anybody, for it to have been her was quite special to me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Dirty realism. I love that. It reminds me of the Dangerous Writer thing from Portland, and like, it's interesting how I feel like I guess it was kind of like the grunge era. It kind of,
Mm.
permeated literature and writing like across the country in all these different ways, and people just realized like you actually have to, not describe landscapes as like metaphorical, you know, heavens or
Yeah,
whatever. Just like get down with what's happening in the real world.
yeah, like meet your neighbor. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And writing that wasn't New York City centered too, but that's like its own kind of thing. Like that, I was kind of hungry for that, even though I participate in reading it and loving it. But it's that kind of, I'm from Maine and work from Maine. And so sometimes when talking about literature, I'm talking about like, and meeting people, amazing people like you, it feels like I'm in an imaginary landscape, because that's really like my day to day is something so much different. And so when I am writing, I'm writing about more my neighbors, like more of what's happening, kind of on a ground level more. Um, yeah, so that tension is kind of funny, but sometimes Annie has felt less and less over the years. I think as our work has started accumulating and becoming like more and more real, she's less of an imaginary character, because it was for a while. And I mean, that was COVID too, but like everything kind of felt like fantasy.
yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Like I've been thinking so much lately about the intersection of like fantasy and reality and magic and reality, and just like how we just want magic so badly. I mean, I've been thinking about it actually in terms of like Maha, like this, like we really want our bodies to be these magical things that we can like do these weird things like crystals or whatever and just like heal things that are
Hmm.
really hard. And it just seems like it goes from like art to real life in this way culturally, where we're just like, fairy sex and maha and all of these things seem like so connected. And then AI comes in and just brings in like another level of just like all of this world. But I think that everybody's coming back to kind of what you're talking about where you started, where we're like just like in person talking to real people,
Hmm.
knowing that this is actually a person that I'm talking to, and connecting about real life experiences that are different from ours.
Yeah, yeah. And it's something, I mean, I'm, teaching right now, like adjuncting at like a community college in the center of Maine. And I mean, wide range of sorts of students that are there, but the younger ones, there is like an isolation that has come with the technology in that time that like I know there's like a think piece every other freaking second, about AI and these freaking kids and that isolation. But yeah, that like feeling creative fodder from the box doesn't really happen. Like they can sometimes people can put it into the box, but the box doesn't really give it to these kids, and that now it's their attention, like that's their world a little bit. And so there's become a little bit of a, I don't know. Yeah, I think that this world is so desperate for some sort of magic, like truly, and I like that writers can find it in like us.
Yeah, yeah. I, I really think that's the opportunity of writing right now, is just to like bring like this might sound like a tangent, and maybe it is, I don't know. I'm currently obsessed with this otter in Florida that it's a cadaver otter. And I'm like, I just finally got a yes, so I have a reason to be obsessed with it, to like write an article about it. I've been pitching it everywhere because this otter is finding human remains, which is like, it's like this.
This is breaking news for me. You're gonna have to. This is breaking news. Why isn't this in every single newspaper?
I
Sorry.
know, I
Who
know,
have we pitched to?
right? I mean,
Yeah.
my poor friends have to hear me talking about this otter all the time. His name is Splash, so everybody knows him by his first name now. I'm meeting him in like a week, and I'm
Oh,
so excited.
great.
I'm like going to Florida, like to meet this otter and learn about his like I don't know, some like biotech in his whiskers that helps him locate human remains that don't have a smell. He's
That's
the
insane.
I know, it's amazing, and I just keep thinking that like that's the magic. That's the
Yeah.
magic. It's just like it's
Yeah.
some guy in Florida who's been training rescue dogs for a million years was just thinking out of the box about like how do we get to things that are underwater, because dogs can't get to that. And so he's like at a zoo hanging out with other zookeepers, and he's like, what about otters?
Oh, I, I just it it is all about that. That is what it's all about. I somewhat tangent, but I doing electric, electricity was extremely tangential to like how I was building the architecture of my life, doing the what I thought was the writer thing, like to get the MFA. And like I was like, okay, now I do what, and I kind of really quickly returned to reality of a life that, is of this landscape of this community, which I love, and all I want to do is be here. But electricity was more of an idea of like very material concerns, like of like how am I going to build an autonomous life for myself? It wasn't really an idea based in, and so that was more of like a response of what I think that the world was needing, just practically. I was like, that is something I could provide. I could do that. That is not going anywhere. I won't be rendered obsolete. Um, but then, you know, in a learning about science, and I guess that's like I wasn't really interested in that so much as a little kid. my sister was, but I was much more like writing, reading, not not really my thing, I guess. Or I was told that I wasn't like that wasn't my thing, maybe. I think that people kind of silo people, and I was a girl, that's also part of it, you know. The writing on the wall with that one. And I was also kind of mediocre at school, you know? And so like I wasn't really called to do anything, you know? So I needed to find what I wanted, you know? And but learning about science and its beauty and about like all of even on the level of an atom, you know, and what's going on with that, it all just is too perfect of a metaphor sometimes to me. Like it almost made me tear up in these weird trade classes. You know what I mean? And in a way that I was like, oh, sorry, boys, you know? But I'm like, yeah, this is like it, you know? And thank God I found that because I think that for a period of time I feel like I lost it a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I love that you're talking about that. I think that's so true. I mean, I became a speech pathologist because I thought it would be an easier science. It ended up being like extremely hard. It was like basically going to
Yeah.
med school in 2 years instead of 8 or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh my God.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
same thing.
I yeah, it's I mean, I've taught some people who were like in electrician programs when I was working at the community college, and it's like I'm like, wow, y'all are doing such insane work and like the apprenticeship with like without knowing, and it's so dangerous. I mean, it's amazing what you do.
It is. And so normal. It's so normal. And it's not really one sort of, I mean, there's kind of like funny generalizations working at like a trade school and having been in that same trade school, but that's kind of a fun thing too. Some of the students I teach are like, hey, and I'm like, hey, you know. Um, they're like, what's this about essay writing? You know, gosh, it's fun. But it's there's not one sort of student in the electrical trade that I've found, you know, which is also really interesting. Whereas there's a couple of other programs where I think that it attracts more like similar sorts of people. I don't know how to like exactly explain. Like carpentry, there's a carpentry program that is like one particular group of people. There's HVAC, there's the plumbing, the criminal justice, you know, all these tracks, you know, you can kind of like see where they're going to end up. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I love teaching at community college is like another thing that is just like so amazing. And I love that you do like I'm similar where I have like all these different hats that I put on at different times of the day. And I think it's like as writers,
Yeah.
we don't talk about that. And especially in like writing podcasts,
Yeah.
we don't talk about that. We just talk about the book and the work and like, and that's all interesting and lovely. And that's what I do when I do this podcast. But like, it's, I think borrowing from these different parts of our lives, like, I don't think I could have become a writer or understood my own story without having done a different kind of thing my whole life, you know, like being engaged with speech pathology, working with, you know, older folks or little kids. You know, like I worked at a NICU in my internship and I was just holding these kids and trying to feed them knowing that they were going to die, like these babies in a NICU. And just like that is so informative in so many ways of like what it means to be human and like why are we doing art in the first place, like this baby's never going to receive my art, so like it just like brings up these questions that are so profound that you would never, if you were just sitting on a computer all day writing, you would never get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's kind of it's the catch of it because you need the time to write, but the work is sometimes what you need to be able to. Yeah, it's just this like weird interrelational thing of like you need time to be able to write, but you need the world, but to have a pressure of work as this to make a certain amount of money for the writing to happen. It's this weird thing to constantly balance. And yeah, I do think that we're at least coming like closer to times where it feels more appropriate to talk about that, you know. There was a piece yesterday or the day before on the Baffler that was like a bunch of different like writers writing pretty explicitly about like how the bread was made, and one guy, Bud Smith, I don't know if you know his writing. I'm a fan, and he had on his Substack an essay one time, and it was just like a tip about like he took a picture of his desk that he had, like he rigged up in his truck to like work in those 15 minutes that he would have from his plastic plant job. And so it was like this kind of like just type of like wood drop down thing where he would just like drop it down and then get writing done. And seeing that really changed me. I was like, that's what the work is, because I think I was just waiting for the perfect conditions for things, you know what I mean? And feeling kind of wronged in a sense that it wasn't kind of being provided to me in a way that I thought that it would have been. And I'm like, that is such a disturbed thing that I thought that it was gonna like, what did you think that being a writer was going to mean? Oh, you thought it was going to mean what it looked like for other people at Bennington College. Are you what was not lining up for you, kiddo? You're from Maine, girl. So so we just had to kind of like braid two things into one person. And now that I've arrived here, I feel like a little bit equipped to talk about it. And also, I feel confident in my success at Enliven too. Like that's the other thing that I feel like I'm not ashamed to talk about that part of my life. And I'm really proud to work for Annie and Cal now and like everybody there because they're totally like proud of me for representing myself that way too. Like they're not trying to make me like not talk about all of these other dimensions of what makes me me or why I work the way that I work too, because I could be way more like I could sign more clients, I could try to make this more of a profitable enterprise for myself, but that's not really what my bag is here.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Like, how did
Yeah.
you go from, all the things that you're doing to becoming an agent, and like, talk about your process with moving
Yeah.
into this agency too, if you don't mind. I think that would be
Yeah,
lovely.
of course. Well, it starts with Annie, but Annie was thinking about being an agent, and she was in conversations with, at the time, Leslie Shipman, who had her speakers agency, the Shipman Agency. And she kind of was like, you know what? You should come and kind of use the umbrella, the architecture of the Shipman Agency to kind of just like start developing as an agent. And so Annie was kind of given a lot of autonomy to be able to do whatever she was wanting to do, whatever writing that she was responding to. Um, she sent me an email having had taught me, and was like, hey, do you have a manuscript? Crazy thing to have been asked. Me, dumb ass, was like, I don't have a manuscript, which is like classic. And she was like, God bless her. She was like, what do you need to be able to get a manuscript? And I was like, a job, which was frankly true. And then Andrew was like, okay, done. So what I started doing and have been doing for her at when she was at the Shipman Agency for 5 years was I was in the slush pile. And it was um, an amazing perspective. It was a lot of reading. I learned a lot about candidly the difference about reading for just reading's sake, and then reading for a market in mind, and kind of having to understand what market meant, because to be at all good at this, it's to understand sales, you know, um, because yes, yeah, at the end of the day, that's a little bit what it is. But I was like trying to figure out a way I could access that sort of insight, as a reader. And what I started thinking about it as of like more about editors' tastes. And so then I became like a absolute sleuth about everybody everywhere in publishing, which is not that actually big of a world. And I did it all like remote in Maine, you know, on my little couch, feeding information into Annie's ear and like passing up manuscripts her way that I thought had some value. And of course Annie has her own taste and whatever, and like she has said yes to manuscripts that I said no to, and vice versa, etc. But there were a couple of ones that like lined up that specifically Brittany's was a big one for me, where Brittany was an unsolicited, and I was really like, Annie, we have to have this, and having that so quickly be purchased at FSG was and at a good sale was such a like a vote of confidence for Brittany first and foremost, because her work is amazing, but for all of us in our own little universe. And I think that that was one of the stones for Annie to realize, you know what? For me to kind of be able to grow in the way that I want to, I think I have to do this a little bit differently than what is existing at the shipment agency. And I think Leslie agreed and was in support fully of the transition. And so Annie was like, let's do Enliven. She starts talking. She's got a gift of gab. And with Cal Morgan, who has worked in publishing for years and years and years and is a total legend. And he, I guess, like magically wanted to come, like, oh, like, and do it with us. And so I, and Annie was like, and then we'll have Mary Alice. And I, instead of just having to work for her as an assistant, and candidly, she's been trying to get me to be an agent for as long as she's been an agent. She wanted me to start signing people like for a long time. I really didn't want to. I think that that was like I really felt scared. And candidly, there was a couple of like almost, of half signs or things like that it it's just a lot of learning happened, and I was getting scared a little bit, and you don't want to be led by anybody that's scared. But it wasn't until I kept on laying down candidly sales that I was like, oh crap. You know what I mean? Or it's like, no, I think I got this, And so now I have a little bit more of that confidence, and it lined up perfectly with Annie's Enliven, and here we friggin' are in it now. And I've got clients. Like we're running now,
That's
Um,
awesome. That's so
it's so
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. It seems lovely. Like when the website went up and I was like looking, I was so excited to see just everything. It seems like it's like a big, new, beautiful thing. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's really and we keep on doing meetings too. And so it's like it's so much different now. Like I have like at my fingertips more of this world we were talking about. Like it feels more real now. It feels more aligned. Like Annie was my I don't know, we have a hard time saying like what she is to me. We go like twin flame, mother, sister, lover, boss, which is like not great, but like also great. But like it just was text messages of like what we did together. Like that's just was our relationship, really. Now I get to go to meetings in New York, and I get to go again. And so it's like these are people, and their care about writers is so precious to see, because I think that I didn't I didn't know if that was real or not going through academia. And it is. It exists in sales, but we can't forget at the end of the day it's a market, and that sometimes gets confused with art. But there are good agents in it trying to pull work from people that are underrepresented and are in work that just is interesting and good and deserves to be heard.
Mhm. Which is so hopeful, especially like in I swear, like I just hear people talking all the time about like how the only nonfiction that sells is either like, prescriptive or celebrity and just like all these things, which I understand. I understand. I also like know people who read, and I'm a part of like these book groups that have like, 26,000 members, and they actually don't like celebrity memoir and they don't like prescriptive nonfiction. They want real stories from real people. And so it's like there's this disconnect between what readers buy and what editors buy, it seems, that is so
I
fascinating.
I am, yes. And I think there's a lot to be said about the art of persuasion and being the I was gonna say snake oil salesman, but it's not a snake oil salesman, but being essentially kind of like that intermediary of like dressing it up for, that's what an agent does, is like we're going to dress up how what this book is in words that is going to like attract essentially an editor who, candidly, it's not even what they want or not want. It's what their bosses in a room are allowing them to, more, which is crazy to say it that way, but kind of, and so it is. I like to think of it as Trojan horses, where it's like we have these genres, these like tried and true things that are just not going anywhere. And we actually should say, thank goodness that they exist, because otherwise publishing would be, but like romance, thank God for you, horror, thank goodness for you, like all of that along. So anyway, I like the idea of trying to kind of like get something into what looks like the architecture of a genre, but inside of it is actually something a little bit different. And I think that audiences are actually ready for that. And because we're in this, you know, final, whatever you want to call it, but like in content saturation or whatever, now that we just have so much abundance of like replicated like movies that have happened already again and will be done once more again, like I do think that there is a little bit of like that the ingenuity has a little bit of, I don't know. I saw on YouTube ads that there was like a Coach ad with like a book, like books were in ads, like Elle Fanning's holding like a Pride and Prejudice like copy with her Coach purse, and I'm like, something's happening here where I think somebody wants some deeper intelligence and authority, and that is what good writing has. I think that's actually a Gordon Lish quote, actually, right? Or right, good writing has authority
Yeah,
to do
something
whatever
like
it wants, something
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I love what you're saying. And I think it's so hopeful. I actually, I think there's a lot to lose hope about every everywhere right
Yeah.
now. But I I don't know. I feel like reality is coming back into vogue, and writing is reality. Like writing just gives you access to reality, like more than anything else. I mean, I think movies can too, and other art can. But like writing is just like it's just your imagination of reality. So it just like kind of gives you this portal that other things, they give you a little bit more information, so you don't have to do as much work. And I think that writing is great for like making you do the body work of getting there.
Body work. I have to tell you this amazing class that I have right now. It's called Writing Seminar, and it's college writing. So it's just the required class that everybody has to take, but it has one additional credit hour. And so it's kind of a self-select option for students that are going to have a challenge they anticipate with the content. So in the classroom that I have, which is the largest class that I have, it is almost split perfectly down the middle between first generation immigrants and older adult white men returning from college after a long time being out. And it's the community college where we're located right now is it's located in Lewiston, Auburn, which was during the ice raids that have been going on. Maine was targeted in whatever Operation Catch of the Day, as it was called. And Lewiston is one of the most diverse areas of Maine. And I had students that were, not coming to classes. And the first thing that, it's not even my choice of how exactly the class is structured. I'd have freedom, but not entirely. And the first thing we have to teach is memoir. And we're talking about reading that I get autonomy over. And so I'm picking the reading of what we're going to talk about in that room. And this week's we've been doing argument too, an argument like, and I get to put the readings in the room, and I'm like the kind of maestro of the conversation. And I'll tell you, you'd think that that classroom was the one designed in which was going to like fall apart at its seams, and it is the only place that I have like actually felt true hope in a long time, like true hope. And the vehicle of it is writing. And that was like, I'm like, it is, I'm a changed man. It was really something else. Sometimes I Stand Here Ironing by Tilly Olson for just an example of like kind of like a way that you can write about an ordinary thing and kind of be pulled in multiple narrative strands, even by something simple. And hearing these like big guys talking about their moms in class, it's just, and then having an immigrant who is a young mother speak about her experience, and then them cross talking. It's just, I
That,
mean,
that's so cool. One of my first classes that I taught was similar. It was in Gresham, Oregon, and it was like a really similar split. And there were a lot of people on both sides who were formerly incarcerated too. So it was like I thought the world was gonna like just go like poof, when I got there. And I took over that class from another teacher who was teaching Hillbilly Elegy, because this was 2015,
mm, remember
2016.
when
Yeah, and whole
we
conversation.
never liked it.
Yeah, horrible. It's a horrible book. It was so
Never
bad.
liked it. It was
Like,
so
I was so mad at the Atlantic for all of their like love articles about that book. I was like, what are we reading the same page? Like, whatever. It was
yeah.
so dumb. But she was teaching that and Pizzagate, and like she was using Google Earth to like go and look at these rural communities and like have people imagine what it was like to grow up in them, and why
Huh.
would you believe in Pizzagate, which is a whole nother thing now. I mean, with Epstein files and all that pizza stuff, but like it it's just like, but it was the same thing. It was just like the most hopeful thing around that horrible election year, just like seeing these people like imagine each other's lives over and over and over again. It's so amazing. It's just amazing. I don't want to keep you too long. I'm looking at the time and I'm going to be a good girl. So I want to ask, I have two questions for you if you're open to either of them. One, what are you working on right now? And two, what are you looking for as an agent? Because everybody
Oh my
wants
God. Great, great. I'll answer the first one. I am working on I have a short story that I'm working on that I'm kind of tentatively titling Class Consciousness, which is kind of a cheeky title in the end. Um, but my larger work that I'm more working on lately is a something that I've kind of been writing for 10 years. It's weird to say that, but it's a long time now. But it's about a pig human hybrid, and kind of this there's research and experiments that have happened about utilizing human and pig embryos for organ transplantation. And a long time ago, I had the idea that like that would be an interesting like voice to try to render if like it found consciousness. And so I the timing that it lined up when I was trying to write that in my life is a really weird thing to try to kind of return to. But I think that needed to for a long time. And it's finally becoming much more of a novel and less of just a kind of like rhetorical game with myself as a writer, which is a very exciting thing. Um, but that's more of like I'm a very slow writer, and I've had to make my peace with that. And I'm happy that I'm happy that the process is at least happening right now, because I think I was in for a long time a creative drought, and you don't get good at what you don't do. And so for a time I wasn't writing, and so for a time I wasn't getting good at it. And so I've been, and I know that there's like I think of now that Fred Moten quote from that's like learning is walking, talking, it's doing all of those things. So like, the work is on everything. Blah, blah, blah. I get it. I hear it. Um, what I'm interested in as a agent, it's really hard to say, because if I lined up all of the books that I've one made offers on, and also now what I have, it's an interesting mirror of my taste. And so I when I'm saying yes to somebody's work, first and foremost, I'm kind of thinking about it. Can I see, do I know an exact person that I will email this to? Do I, and so without that piece, regardless of if I like it or love it or whatever, there's a little bit of me that I'm like, I have no use to this person, and so it's not my time to try to be part of their experience, of publishing. I just don't know that person that this book was for, and that's okay. Like, and that's okay. That says nothing about the work itself, obviously. But when it comes to what I'm liking as a reader, I'm really, really, really liking things that candidly are kind of like sitting in the architectures of these like bigger genres that are a little bit uh, uh, much more subversive in nature. I like that. I like people playing with form in that way, especially as somebody who's interested a lot of times in fiction. And so that's kind of a little bit my wheelhouse. But I love nonfiction, and I candidly would love to get more like I don't know. I think I would like trying to play around for submitting like research books and things, like more like even more like pieces of rigorous and hyper specific academia. Like I would love to try to find homes for that. But really, I think of that Joy Williams quote a lot about from her essay Why I Write. That's like, why does the writer write? The writer seeks to serve something, 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 that cold elemental grace that knows us. There, what I like about writing is like, or the writing that it feels like I want to represent. I like writing that kind of somehow is looking up and out. And there's a type of writing that I read and I like and I see out in the world, that it kind of sets up its own mirrors, and it like is it's so hyper into itself that I it's not for me to represent that story. And it's not even to say that I don't like those books, but the sorts of books that feel called to try to make work have just been books that are a little bit more external.